I just want to start by saying, these stories were not made up. They actually came from various employees who once worked or who still currently work at the World Trade Center. I will not disclose anyone's identity because there could be repercussions for the stories. The only hint I will give is, look for the people who began working there during the early stages of construction. What is even more horrifying is, that almost every story was witnessed by more than one person, with the exception of the generator plant story. But even with that story, it was formally reported to the organization this employee worked for. It was documented in his round sheet and sent out to the various departments who received the round sheet emails. With that being said, sit back and relax because these are stories that have only been passed on by word of mouth. Enjoy. The new World Trade Center campus in New York City stands as a testament to resilience and rebirth. Yet beneath its gleaming surface, it is a place marked by the shadows of its tragic past. The 16-acre site, with its towering buildings, performing arts center, and museum, sits atop a labyrinthine underground world teeming with electrical, mechanical, and HVAC equipment, and even a hidden roadway with loading docks. The individuals who work within this complex infrastructure, ranging from operations command center staff to PAPD, operating engineers, electricians, elevator mechanics, fire and life safety personnel, porters, wayfinders, and security, know that their rounds, especially during the graveyard shift, can sometimes be anything but routine. One such worker, known by his nickname, Neck, experienced something that defies logical explanation. This is his story, as it was told to me, and it is a story that I find chillingly convincing despite my natural skepticism. It was an ordinary night in Lower Manhattan, or at least it seemed to be. The streets were empty, a stark contrast to the ceaseless activity within the skyscrapers where operations continued around the clock. These 24/7 365 operations meant that someone, somewhere, was always on duty, ensuring that the vast machinery of the World Trade Center campus functioned smoothly. Neck was on the graveyard shift, a time when the world feels different, quieter, more still, and yet more unsettling. His task that night was routine: complete his rounds, take meter readings, and mop the generator plant. It was a job he had done countless times before without incident. But as the clock edged towards the witching hour, something unthinkable happened. After finishing his checks and readings, Neck grabbed his mop and began cleaning the generator plant. The cavernous space was dimly lit and so quiet that you could hear a dime drop. He moved methodically, his mind wandering in the monotonous rhythm of his work. But as he stepped between the 5th and 6th generators, he felt an icy chill run down his spine. Without warning, Neck froze. His mop clattered to the floor, and his round sheet fell into the mop bucket. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't move his eyes away from the sight before him. There, standing between the generators, was a man engulfed in flames. The figure's features were twisted in a silent scream, the fire consuming him yet producing no sound. Panic surged through Neck's body, but he remained rooted to the spot, paralyzed by fear. The burning man began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing speed, advancing towards him. The horror of the scene finally broke through Neck's paralysis, and he turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest, the image of the fiery apparition seared into his mind. Bursting through the entrance door to the generator plant, Neck stumbled into the corridor, gasping for breath. He leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of what had just happened. His rational mind struggled to process the irrational sight he had witnessed. He pulled out his phone with trembling hands and dialed his supervisor's number, waking him from a deep sleep. His supervisor, a man who had been employed at the campus for over a decade, was initially dismissive. "Neck, you're probably just tired," he said, skepticism heavy in his voice. "Go back in and finish mopping." But there was an edge to his tone, a flicker of doubt born from his own experiences on the campus. He had seen things he could not explain, things that had made him question the nature of reality. Despite his terror, Neck obeyed. He re-entered the generator plant, his steps slow and hesitant. The burning man was gone, leaving only the faint smell of smoke lingering in the air. Neck finished his task, each minute stretching into an eternity, and vowed never to work the overnight shift again. True to his word, Neck requested a shift change and was moved to the day shift. He never returned to the generator plant, the memory of that night forever haunting him. His account of the incident was detailed in his rounds report and sent to both the state government entity that owns the campus and his employer. It was an extraordinary risk, there was nothing to be gained by reporting something so unbelievable, yet he did it anyway. I heard this story directly from Nick, and it has stayed with me ever since. I'm naturally skeptical, not prone to believing in the paranormal. Yet something about Nick's story, the consistency in his retellings, and the sheer terror in his eyes as he recounted it, made me believe him. He wasn't the type to fabricate stories, and he certainly wasn't using any mind or mood-altering substances. Nick's story is just one of many whispered among the employees who work at the World Trade Center campus. The tragic history of the site seems to have left something lingering, something that occasionally makes itself known in the most terrifying ways. Whether it's a glimpse of a shadow out of the corner of an eye, the feeling of being watched in an empty corridor, or, in Nick's case, the sight of a burning man, there are things here that defy explanation. For those who know the campus intimately, Nick's experience is far from unique. There are others who have seen things, felt things, things that cannot be rationally explained. The World Trade Center is a place of profound history and deep emotions, a place where the past and the present sometimes collide in the most unsettling ways. So, the next time you walk through the bustling streets of Lower Manhattan, spare a thought for the workers beneath your feet, in the hidden city that keeps the campus running. They have stories to tell, stories that might just make you believe in the impossible. Rest in peace to everyone who lost their life on that fateful day on September 11, 2001. When people look at the new World Trade Center, they see buildings that didn't exist prior to 9/11. Examples include the 9/11 Museum, the Performing Arts Center, and the Oculus. This story takes place in 2015. Back then, there was a massive hole in the ground at the site where the old Twin Towers stood. It's been filled in with multiple underground levels now, but once upon a time, people worked around the clock in that hole. I won't mention which department I work in because I am still employed at the campus. However, years back, we were tasked with pumping all the puddles out of the construction site so the contractors could continue their work. One night, Mills, Mike, and I were tasked with retrieving fuel from a gas station in Midtown. We were working the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, all groggy from working overtime earlier that morning. We had a quick turnaround where we all went into the trailer to nap during the third shift. We did this instead of going home because we needed all the rest we could get on our short 8. We refer to the short 8 hours between shifts as a short 8. Around 3 a.m., we all piled into the 2-seater pickup truck that belongs to the organization that owns most of the campus. We made our way to the West Side Highway and started driving north. Mills, the driver and the one with glasses, said, "Hey, do you guys see that?" Mike and I told Mills to shut up and keep driving. 30 seconds later, "Holy shit," were the only words I could say. There was a young girl about 100 yards from us, walking in the middle of the street. There had been a story circulating of security guards seeing a girl or woman in a white dress around the construction site. This wasn't just hearsay, multiple people had seen this and even reported it. In another story, I'll explain how an encounter caused someone to quit their job. The area where this thing was seen ended up being closed off for 6 months, but that's another story for another day. What the hell is a young girl wearing a white dress doing walking in the northbound West Side Highway lane? I thought. She was in the northbound lane, walking south, straight towards the front of our truck. Mills slowed down as we approached. He asked me, "What the hell should we do?" "Keep driving," I responded. A very long 30 to 45 seconds later, this girl, whose face we couldn't really see because of her hair, walked to the front of our vehicle. We were stopped, so she stopped for a split second. It wasn't natural because, number one, this looked like a young girl, there's no one around, not even another vehicle. The girl began walking around the pickup truck, obviously walking along the passenger side, nearest to me. She didn't say anything, didn't look at us, just walked, making her way to the back of the pickup. Once she was around us, she continued to walk in the middle of the street. The three of us looked at each other and said, "WTF?" Instead of speaking to her or saying anything, we all froze up for some reason. It's like we became paralyzed and couldn't move our lips. Why the hell were we so scared of a young girl? It made no sense. But it also didn't make sense why a young girl with a white dress and no shoes would be walking in the middle of a multi-lane highway, in the middle of the night. However, as soon as I looked in the passenger side view mirror, she was gone. As crazy as this sounds, it actually happened, and I wasn't the only person who saw this. We had become the next set of employees to come in contact with this spirit, as some referred to it. People have said there is also a woman who walks around in a white dress who is looking for a child. But was this her child? Who knows? All I know is that I'm a religious man, so I believe in life after death and spirits. I said a few Hail Marys, and we were on our way. This was the first of a couple of paranormal experiences Mills and I had together. It's been burned into the back of my mind. Being that I still work at the campus, anytime I'm out and about at night, my mind goes to this phantom girl in the white dress. We parked the truck near the gas station, all of us still shaken by what we had just witnessed. The silence in the cab was thick with fear and confusion. Mills was the first to break it. Did we all see the same thing?" he stammered, his eyes wide behind his glasses. Mike nodded slowly. "Yeah, man. That was something else." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Okay, let's just get the fuel and get back. We'll talk about this later." We filled the gas canisters in near silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The city was eerily quiet at that hour, the usual hum of traffic and people replaced by an unsettling stillness. As we loaded the canisters into the truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. On the drive back, none of us spoke. Every shadow seemed to move, every distant sound seemed amplified. We reached the site, parked the truck, and got out to begin refueling the generators. The air was thick with the smell of fuel and the faint, ever-present scent of wet concrete. "Hey," Mike said suddenly, his voice trembling. "Do you hear that?" We all stopped, listening. At first, there was nothing but the usual sounds of the construction site, the hum of the few machines running, the distant clatter of tools across the site. But then, faintly, we heard it. A soft, mournful humming. It was coming from the direction of the pit nearest to the highway. "What the hell is that?" Mills whispered, his eyes darting around nervously. We followed the sound, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. As we neared the edge of the pit, the humming grew louder, more distinct. A constant deep hum. We peered over the edge, our lights illuminating the depths below. And there she was. The girl in the white dress, standing at the bottom of the pit at least 100 feet down, looking up at us. As soon as my flashlight beam made contact with her, I pointed it away. She literally made us jump because that was the last thing we'd expect to see. My first question was, how the hell did this girl get around the perimeter gate and down in the hole? Her hair glistened, almost looking wet, her dress now stained with dirt and grime from her surroundings. But it was her eyes that sent a chill down my spine. It was the only feature we could really make out since it was so dark and she was pretty deep in the pit. We initially thought it was someone messing with us when we previously encountered her on the highway, but now, she's done something that is irregular. Got past security, got over a locked fence and somehow ended up in the northwest side of the pit. She would have had to walk past security in order to walk down the ramp which would bring you to the base of the pit, as many remember from the old aerial photos of the site. The only way down into the area she was in was by falling, and if she fell, she most likely wouldn't be alive anymore. But those eyes, empty, soulless, and staring directly at us. "Yo. What are you doing down there?" I called out, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. She didn't respond. Instead, she began to hum again, the sound filling the air around us. I felt a cold breeze brush past me, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Mills grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "Let's get out of here," he said urgently. "Now." We backed away slowly, looking away from the girl. As we turned and ran back to the truck, it became silent. We jumped into the cab, Mills fumbling with the keys and stuttering. He had one mean stutter that got worse whenever he was nervous. The engine roared to life, and we sped away from that part of the site, not looking back. We didn't speak of that night again, not in detail. But every time I pass that part of the campus, I feel a chill, a reminder of the girl in the white dress and the eerie humming that haunts my memories. It's a story that will stay with me forever, a testament to the inexplicable events that sometimes unfold in the quiet, dark corners of our world. Rest in peace to all the men, women, and children who lost their lives on 9/11/2001. Also, rest in peace to all those who have lost and continue to lose their lives due to 9/11-related illnesses. I first want to say that names were changed to protect the employee's identity. It was midway through construction of the Oculus, which sits on the 16-acre World Trade Center campus. We were working our normal overnight shift, which was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. This was prior to the construction of the Oculus, so there was no structure present. It was a big open space, with construction of the different levels occurring. If anyone is familiar with the Oculus today, this incident would have occurred near where the PATH train now is, and the long corridor which takes you under the West Side Highway to Brookfield Place. During construction, prior to the cement being set, there were these plank-like bridges that stretched across this area. At night, when it was dark, it almost felt like you were walking on some mythological bridge, with the dark, infinite abyss on both sides. Realistically, there was a few-story drop on either side, since there are multiple levels underground. The lowest level probably being one of the back-of-house mechanical spaces. It was a normal night, we were doing our rounds and walking around the poorly lit construction site. In the background, we could hear the creaking of the steel beams of Tower 1, also known by the public as the Freedom Tower. I remember walking across what we'll refer to as the bridge. Without thinking twice, I took a look down the long, wide corridor as if I was looking at the escalators to Brookfield Place. To my surprise, I could see a bunch of people walking in suits. Since it was so dark and the moonlight doing most of the illumination, I could see enough to make out that these were professionals in suits. It seemed pretty odd at first because why were suits here so late, and where the hell were they going? It hadn't dawned on me initially, but as I was walking back to the trailer for a coffee break, I realized there were no suits on site tonight. It was only me, a few construction guys, some of the engineers, and some security guards. So what the hell did I see? I thought ghosts were just for scary stories, but that's an event that will stick with me forever. As the night continued, the eerie feeling of what I had seen started to creep into my mind. I couldn't shake the image of those people in suits. I decided to bring it up during our coffee break in the trailer. "Hey, did anyone else see something strange out there tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. My coworker, Mike, looked up from his cup. "What do you mean by strange?" I saw a group of people walking down the corridor near the PATH train area. They were all in suits. "Did you guys see anything like that?" The room fell silent. Then one of the engineers, who we'll call Tom, spoke up. "I didn't see anything like that, but I've heard some stories. You know, about this place being haunted." "Haunted? Come on, Tom," Matt scoffed. "We're in New York City, not some old abandoned asylum." "No, seriously," Tom insisted. "A lot of people believe that spirits of those who died on 9/11 still linger here. Especially since we're rebuilding on the same ground." I felt a chill run down my spine. But why would they appear now? And to me? Tom shrugged. "Who knows? Maybe they're just trying to make their presence known, maybe they have some unfinished business, or maybe they just think you're handsome." "I don't know, bro, you're asking the wrong person." Later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak and groan of the steel beams seemed amplified in the quiet of the construction site. As I made my way back across the bridge, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I had the distinct feeling that I wasn't alone. I stopped in my tracks and looked around. The darkness seemed to close in around me, and I could hear footsteps, like there was a group of people in dress shoes walking on a marble floor. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was experiencing. There were no floors in that area, maybe it was an echo from somewhere else. But where? "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. "Is anyone there?" There was no response, just the continued creaking of the beams and the distant hum of machinery. I took a deep breath and continued walking, with the sound of my footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. Suddenly, I saw a shadow move out of the corner of my eye. I spun around, but there was nothing there. My mind raced with thoughts of what Tom had said earlier. Could it really be the spirits of those who had perished here? I decided to call it a night and head back to the trailer. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. It could have been in my head, but I just wanted to get back to the trailer where everyone else was. When I finally reached the trailer, I slammed the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The other guys looked at me with concern. "You okay, bro?" Mike asked. "Yeah," I said, though I didn't feel okay. I don't know. I think I need some air." I stepped outside and took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. As I looked out at the construction site, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Standing at the edge of the bridge was a figure in a suit and his briefcase, staring directly at me. It was a silhouette, so there was no distinguishable features. For a minute, I thought it was some of the guys messing with me. However, right after I blinked, the figure was gone. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if I was just seeing things. But the feeling of being watched remained. The next night, I couldn't bring myself to walk across the bridge again. I took a different route, sticking close to the other workers. As we moved through the site, I told Mike and Tom about what I had seen. "I saw him again," I said, my voice trembling. "The man in the suit. He was just standing there, watching me." Tom nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe he's trying to tell you something. Have you thought about trying to communicate with him?" "Communicate? With a ghost?" Mike shook his head. "This is getting ridiculous. Us union guys are rough around the edges and like to bust each other's chops, so I became the victim of all the jokes you could imagine." But I couldn't shake the feeling that Tom was right. That night, I decided to try something different. I went to the spot where I had seen the figure and stood there, waiting. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. "If you're there, please, show yourself." For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Just as I thought I heard someone exhale near me, one of my coworkers called out for me. He was standing up on grade level and asked if I wanted to grab food. So that was my cue to get the hell out of here. The next day, I told Tom about what had happened. "I think they need our help," I said. "But I don't know what to do." The next night, as I walked across the bridge, I was literally about to piss my pants. The city seemed extra quiet tonight. I could hear the wind as it passed through the site. It was giving me horror movie vibes. I promised myself that this was the last time I'd ever cross that bridge at night alone, again. I tried to keep my eyes forward and just focus on walking across the fare zone, which we refer to as the area near the path trains. Once I got to the point where I can see down the corridor, I almost couldn't help myself from taking a look down the corridor. I instantly started cold sweating, hair on the back of my neck sticking straight up like it wanted to jump off my body, and to my surprise, there was no one there. I never saw the ghosts again after that, but I still think about them often. I believe that they were trying to tell us something, to remind us of the lives that were lost and the importance of remembering and honoring their memory. And I will never forget that night, the night I saw the ghosts of the World Trade Center.